So I'm like done with scripts because those are painful, so I'm just gonna talk. So in this video, we'll be talking about basically just gods until it ends. Because as you may have noticed if you read the book, there are a few characters who are just a tad bit overpowered. And before I continue, this video will obviously contain spoilers. So do not watch it if you care about spoilers. And if not, then welcome. So when you think of a god, right? You think of like, I don't know, someone who's immortal, someone who can manipulate reality, has power over creation, destruction, has like really strong, unbeatable, omniscient force. I can like do anything, whatever he wanted. Doesn't matter. So until it ends, there are 5 characters that I will be talking about. One of them, literal God. Uh, the character that goes by the name God. That's like the kind of like the end of the spectrum on the godly side. He can do everything, manipulate reality, immortal, creation, destruction, has like unlimited supply of power. He's omniscient. He knows everything. That is the standard. That is what you think of when you think of God. And there's at the bottom of the list. Now you might like call bullshit on me for this, but at the bottom of the list, the most human out of the characters we're talking about, Christian. Now, we're not talking about beginning of story Christian. We're talking about after he dies. Because after he dies, he gets enveloped by both hatred and his quirk, and he's reborn as this sort of force of nature. Now, he can pretty much do whatever the fuck he wants. He has the destruction, he has the strength, the power. Uh, he says, "You in this place, you better start hauling ass in the other direction." Like we're talking basically just he could vaporize like an entire city if he wanted to. Like that those categories, they're checked off. And then you have immortal. It's not specifically stated in the book that he is immortal, but I'm telling you right now, he's immortal. If you could find a way to kill him that I, as the author, have not thought of, then by all means, tell me in the comments what you think would kill him. But the fact that his body is kind of not containing real body parts, he's just dark matter. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's pretty immortal. And then omnipresent. Now, this part, it's not omniscient. He doesn't know everything. But omnipresent. This only applies when he's in space. During the last 2 chapters, when the group goes into space, Christian then, since he kind of, how to explain this? When he's around darkness, he is so much stronger. He becomes one with the darkness, and he can do whatever he wants. If he wasn't immortal before, he sure as hell was now. Because when he becomes one with the darkness of space, he pushes the group of kids in their little bubble thingy, I forget what I called it, past the limits of what is physically possible, faster than the speed of light. And because it's stated in the book that the only thing faster than the speed of light is the speed of darkness. This being because darkness is the absence of light. But I'm not going to make this whole video about Christian, so we're going to move on. I will make a separate video about Christian in the future. But in terms of omnipresent, yes, in space because of the darkness everywhere. Xavier is next up, a little spot higher than Christian. Now, at face value, you wouldn't think that Xavier would be higher than Christian, because in the book, Christian does overpower Xavier and almost kills him. He would have killed him if not for Yui. But that's a whole different thing. Xavier is caught off guard. Xavier's still young. He doesn't really quite care enough to go into depth of how he can better optimize his use of his quirk. So yes, if he was smarter about it, he could have definitely won that fight. But that whole thing's besides the point. Xavier, he is what you think of when you think of creation. He is, if you want to give him a label, he is the creator god. And the actual god, we can call the Pontifex. Christian, we can refer to as the god of destruction. So we have the Pontifex, destruction, and now we're dealing with creation here. His quirk is that he can create anything he wants. Doesn't even have to be real. In his first appearance, he was creating Pokemon. He's creating real life Pokemon and selling them to his friends. And I've gotten feedback from other people saying like, "Oh, that's a little jarring or that's a little goofy." But if you really stop and think about it, this is a 14-year-old who's obsessed with anime. That's the first thing that's established about Xavier. He's obsessed with anime. So yeah, like what would you do if you're obsessed with anime and you had the power to create fictional things? You'd create Pokemon. But once again, getting too in depth on one specific character, I'll make a separate character on Xavier. I meant video. That should be either the next video or it's coming up. Xavier's coming up. But Xavier, he definitely has creation. I also put down that he has powers of destruction because of the fact that he can also use his ability to copy other people's abilities. So all he would need to do is copy the ability of someone who has really, really, really destructive powers, such as Christian. He doesn't in the story, though, because of the fact that he does not know how that would work out, which is completely valid. If you were to look into the Till It Ends Lost archives on the website, Pieces of Limbo is the most recent short story uploaded as of the recording of this video. And he uses the ability of Victor, who is really strong. So he's like up there, like Xavier, Christian, Victor, they're like up there in terms of strength. And when he uses Victor's quirk without like saying anything to him about it beforehand, something goes wrong. It backfires, scares the fuck out of him. So it only makes sense. Christian, you're dealing with, vaporizing everything around me. Let me just stay away from that because I don't know anything about it. You know? But theoretically, he also could have significant destructive power. Now, moving on a step up from Xavier, we would say is Jake. Jake, he's a little bit higher on the spectrum of human and god. Because a step up from Xavier, he can change his appearance. He can manipulate his own abilities using whatever quirk he has, manipulate the people around him. The reason why he's higher than Xavier, and so much so, is because he steals other people's abilities. He doesn't just like copy them, he steals them. And once again, going back to the Pieces of Limbo, it's established that when Xavier when Xavier copies someone else's ability, it's not as strong as the original quirk. The example given, if Sam were to shoot fire at Xavier and Xavier used Sam's quirk to shoot fire back, Sam's fire would engulf Xavier's. because the copy is not stronger than the original. This is also stated in, hold on, let me look. This is also stated in the Bonds of the Multiverse chapter. Xavier creates a copy of this like sort of mythical sword, and it gets shattered to pieces in his hands by the original. But Jake, on the other hand, doesn't copy, he steals. So he now has the original, it's now his. There's no scaled down version of it. Like, he has that power. So that's why he's above Xavier. So you can manipulate his own abilities. He can obviously steal other people's abilities and give them to himself. His appearance, he is shown to use, allegedly, or you're supposed to infer that he stole someone else's ability to manipulate his appearance. So that's why in an earlier chapter, well, I say earlier in quotation marks, an earlier post-tournament chapter, to disguise himself as the scientist X, someone he works really close by, to sort of fool the kids into taking the bait. Now, at the top of the list, we have Yui. I promise you the video for Yui is coming. It's definitely coming. Yui is by far the most complex character in this entire book. Yui's morals, Yui's character development, Yui's... I'm not even going to get into it. The video's coming. But her appearance. Later in the story, she shows to sort of rewinds time on her own appearance. Not literally rewind time, but she changes her appearance to have a shorter dress and a ponytail, which is supposedly earlier in a period of time, back when she had her outfit like that, her main outfit like that, as you could see in the flashback / hologram that she showed the kids in the chapter titled "A Girl Who Can't Be Trusted." So it's established that just she can will herself to look differently, and she can her abilities. She has probably the jankiest quirk in all the series. It stated that, and I quote, "I can claim any quirk I can think of as my own as long as someone else in the world doesn't have the same ability." So that's her quirk. That's why she's so overpowered. She is sort of the patient zero of quirks. Like, right when God gave everyone quirks, she got the first one. So she thought of a bunch of quirks for herself. And she can still give herself quirks. She's have to think of something that isn't already somewhere in the world, which you can imagine is pretty difficult. There's a lot of people, a lot of quirks. But yeah, the people around her. This isn't necessarily... See, here's where we get into like philosophical shit. Like, being able to manipulate the people around you, that could be a godly thing, a divine sort of thing, or that could just be a human thing, because manipulation is definitely something that humans can do. And Yui and Jake, they both do this. They both manipulate people. But Jake, it's not touched upon much in the book, but I plan to have more of the backstories of each of the characters. It's only really shown in X's chapter, where you get her backstory and how she ended up meeting Jake, where X was at the lowest point in her life. She was quite literally having a mental breakdown. She snapped finally, and Jake shows up and is like, "Hey, I'm going to give you what you want. Just do what I say." And X, it's so simple, but X is in a position where it's like, what are you going to say? No? Why? And with X's fragile mental state, well, non-existent mental state, I guess I should say at this point, all she really is going to act on now is what she wants. She has no reason to act on anything else other than what she wants. That's why she, even though Jake uses this form of manipulation on her, she's not loyal to him whatsoever. She, without a second thought, doesn't turn on him, but doesn't fight on his side anymore. With Yui, on the other hand, Yui has a slightly different form of manipulation. Yui makes it so that doing as she says is seemingly the only option. Whether it be do it, it's your only option because I'll kill you, or it's your only option because you're not supposed to think any other way. That's why she calls herself the mother of all the kids. That's why she makes sure that she has a sort of angelic or divine look to her, make herself look like a goddess. She's described as sort of like a goddess. That's what she wants to portray to everyone, so that it's less of a direct thing. It's just like, okay, I'll do what you say because it feels like I'm supposed to do what you say. It's like the same thing as political leaders. You wear a suit, you wear a suit, you talk a certain way, you act a certain way, and people will take you seriously. That it's the same concept. So the gray area in this is whether this is a human thing or a godly thing, but it is established she manipulates the people around her. And as for creation, one of her many quirks is that she can create things. Well, actually, she doesn't create things. She takes things from other multiverses, giving the illusion that she's creating them. Her base on top of the hill, the elevator, well, the elevator was actually the opposite. She took the elevator shaft and just booted the whole thing to a different multiverse, a different universe in the multiverse. Just out of sight, out of mind. It's completely gone. The entire building she brought from a different universe in the multiverse. And she does this several times throughout the show. Sorry, not show, the book. I wish it was a show. And all these characters, right? It's not necessarily a case of who is stronger than who or who is closer to God than who, because as a result of all the different criterias, you have a bunch of different ways to be closer to God. In terms of pure, raw, destructive power, Christian trumps all of them. In terms of just creation, Xavier trumps all of them. In terms of changing herself to mimic a god, Yui is the mimic of a god. In the same way that Xavier's copy isn't as strong as the original, Yui wants to be a god so badly, but because of the way she went about it, she will always just be a copy. Literally you just can't think of it any other way. Because like Christian got stomped by Yui immediately. Christian beat Xavier. Yui lost to Xavier in the end. She got decapitated. And Jake, I forgot to mention this when I was initially recording, but yeah, we're not going to talk about how Jake got bodied by Christian in that one chapter. I mean, Jake lost to a bunch of people who are just humans. Jake lost to a bunch of kids. And yes, Yui was the one to finish him off, but Yui would not have been able to if it weren't directly because of a bunch of humans. And you can't think of that as a god. A god can't lose to his creations, I say in quotation marks. Hell, the person that kind of dealt the final blow that allowed Yui to kill Jake was a 9-year-old boy. That's a whole separate thing again. Eren will get several videos made on him. I already made one. but that was the scripted video, so I apologize if that sounded very like boxy and robotic. I hope that this for sort of just me talking at you sort of format goes through a little better, easier to listen to. But yeah, we have God at the top, and then going down a level, we have Yui, then Jake, Xavier, and Christian at the bottom. And it's also interesting. Maybe we could even make a third category. It's like instead of a line, we have human, God, and force of nature. Christian would definitely be around the force of nature part, if you want to count that as a whole separate entity. But yeah, that's about it. These are all the different characters that are you could consider gods.